This is exciting. I don't care who you are in the fire service. I don't care where you are. This is the change. This is the pivot. The fire service will look back during this year, decades from now, when we're not in the fire service, when I'm not around the fire service, and go, this is the mark that changed what we did. Welcome back to Navigating NERIS. In our last episode, we talked about NERIS and why it's such a major shift in the fire service. Today's episode, we're going to focus on the operational changes and the impacts for the people using NERIS and how it can improve the data collected and, more importantly, their day-to-day operations. Today's discussion is going to really focus on the operational pieces. We're very fortunate to have some great folks with us today. We have Craig Weinschenk from FSRI. We have Katie Heins and Jennifer Billingsley with us from ESO. I feel like the outside on this, these three have spent so much time on this project, talking, learning from each other, sharing. This is really a great opportunity. So much change taking place. And it's a really exciting time. You know, Craig and I have had an opportunity to talk a little bit about we're changing the industry, we're changing the culture, we're changing those things. But we haven't spent as much time talking about really what's the operational change of going through from NFIRS to NERIS. We know the purpose, we know why, and it needed to be done. So I want to know from this group, really operationally, what's the first thing that you think of that's the change that's different that our customers, the fire industry, people that have gotten the data from NFIRS to do different things are going to see?
So I think for us to really talk about the change, I think it's important to set the stage of where we've been.
Okay.
And so when we talk about NFIRS, right, it started in 1975. It was designed to be a, collection app, but it was done on paper. So carbon copy paper, the yellow, white, pink 3-set, right? And so when we wanted to fill out data on a paper form, you're not going to have someone try to understand firefighter language, right? Writing structure fire and trying to squeeze it into a box. You're going to use a numeric code to simplify it down. And so that is the history of those numeric codes, was all about trying to translate human writing on paper forms, and especially carbon copy paper forms.
Yeah.
So it was a very manual process. And as the system evolved and digitized, it was still very much a digital version of those paper forms. And so much like you used to have to mail in those paper records, now we just email or force manually upload the digital records. And so the biggest operational change I can say now that we're modernizing that stack is building digitally first. And so using an API, we have the systems talk to one another, right? We're removing the human part of having to email files around, manually export files, right? We let the system securely talk to one another, right? And we can give back the fire service a ton of time, right? Think about every record you've had to move around, right? That is now going to be system-to-system communication.
I think that is a good call out that, the data transmission, the data submission is faster. It's more streamlined for agencies. There's a lot less, checking later to make sure that all your data got to the right spot. But you also called out kind of a really important difference. I think the first thing I noticed for all of our customers and everybody in the fire service is all of the lists are different. Everything that they're used to, it's not that the intent of the questions has changed all that much. It's not that we're collecting completely different data, but all of the lists and things that everybody's been used to for so long have been replaced. So there's going to be kind of a learning curve while people get used to the new values and the way they fill out fields.
When we talk about it, a fire report is a fire report, and we've had people demo our system and use it a bunch and say, this is starting to feel really familiar after you do it a couple of times, which is really great, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't get as scared about like them using it out in the field after, after a few tries, they'll get it right. But the data standard is just so different, right? And the missing list values and things like that. But that was exactly the first thing I thought of but it's going to go right to NERIS. No more extract files, more, it's just going to go straight to NERIS. Yeah.
Those of us that have been in the fire for a while not since 75. I want to put that out on the record. But those of us that have been around for a while, you know, we didn't learn NFIRS as this is incident type. We learned a number. And every one of you said to a T that the list changed that piece of it. So when I go run my 75% of my calls that have been medical, that's been a 321 in my mind for a long time. So when we do that change, what's that change to? What's it look like now? So what are we changing to, and how does that make my life better as the person writing the report?
So I think foundationally, we've changed the incident type a little bit structurally, and then also expanded, I think, the usage of incident types. So historically, we've also had to jam an entire complex incident into a single field. And so when you think about a complex incident, it could be a car crash with a fire, car crash with entrapment that requires medical, right? And so we've had to choose based on the perceived hierarchy of the numeric scheme of the previous system to say this is our single incident type. And what that's done historically is devalued the complexity of the fire service. Yeah. And so we have to put a lot of burden on our narrative then to tell the story. With the shift in how we've structured the incident types now, one, they're kind of 3 stages. So they started at the highest level, and I like to call them the disciplines of fire response. So fire, hazardous situation, medical, rescue, right? And then you move more granular into the actual task or thing that you're responding to. And so when we think about then with allowing multiple incident types in a stacked incident structure, one, first class now, we can identify the types of disciplines that are most commonly occurring together, whether they're occurring different times of day of week, all those things, right? We know in, historical anecdotal evidence, right? Weekends and, rush hours play different roles, right? If you live in a community with a transient population, right, around a university, those things tend to spike call volumes associated with those changes. Just like we know those things now, we can say, well, are disciplines changing as well? Are we starting to see at 5 o'clock on a Friday, we have more combinations of these 2 types of incidents? How do we then start to prepare? So I think opening up and one, allowing multiple choices, one, it deburdens the narrative, and 2, allows us to have a different set of analytics that I think we've been craving, right? When you need to go to a city manager or to your chief or to your mayor or whomever, right, to say, hey, we need this specialty piece of apparatus. Well, it's because the specialty piece of apparatus is associated with this incident discipline, and we're running a lot of them. We need this additional training, these resources, right, because we're in all hazards response. Now we have the capability, I think, to really put that message first class in our data.
Your point about the training is, I think, really important as well. Somebody I saw recently had a nice sticker on a laptop case that said, you can't overtrain for a job that can kill you. And I think a lot about that, especially with the multiple incident types that we're tracking, is this is better justification for fire departments to talk to, city managers and internally as a department. Why are we doing all this training? See how much complex stuff that we are actually handling all the time, how often this is affecting us. So it's a better way to visualize that information with 3 incident types on a record.
I think that's really it from the industry standpoint. That's a really interesting approach of we've so long, it had to be one. It was just that one incident type that we had. But how often, I'm just thinking of it's going into summertime down here in Texas, and car drives off the side of the road. It has a catalytic converter. It gets hot. The grass catches on fire. Fire burns across the pasture. Unfortunately, it gets into a barn or a home, and we have this. We always had to say either it was a car fire, it was a grass fire, a wildland fire, or it was a structure fire. Now, the decision I made on Thursday didn't always make the decision I made on Tuesday. And so this is a great opportunity for us to tell our story. And that's one of the things that we've said for years. We know over time we've been asked, what's the biggest issues in the fire service? I can't prove to you what that biggest issue is. So I think that's a great point about the incident. What other operational changes, field changes, do you think is really going to be visible to the person doing the report, doing this data that you think of?
We've been talking a little bit this week about getting on a cadence of changes. Like with NFIRS, they rarely made updates, maybe like every 10 years, like substantial updates, And so if we can get on a, moving it into the more digital space, a more SaaS-like product where we're making, a regular update of these fields were added or, these API endpoints were added, and we get the fire service accustomed to these regular changes. We get them accustomed to this modern environment, and everybody kind of is modernized together, I think it's really exciting, and it's going to be super painful, but super awesome.
No, I think we've screamed about this for years, that the ability to put data in didn't necessarily match what we were doing. That probably came home in two different times. It was during COVID when we were trying to figure out how to track all of those things, and we made some blanket rules that here it is and it's going to be here for XYZ. And then when we looked at the ability with energy storage, change of energy operating vehicles and all those items, and how that has changed our world and is still going to change our world today. But you look at that, and now we're already into discussion about, well, really, where are we on hydrogen operations and motors in trucks moving up and down the road? I mean, it's just, but we've never tracked that. We've never had that.
NFIRS hasn't been able to update lists for that too. So as technology changed, mobile property is a great example of that. I have tons of requests from agencies that want new values on the list as new car companies have come up that are doing EVs and hybrid cars, but they don't have those options. And so this is going to be easier. Departments can make updates, and we, at like NERIS, you guys can make updates as well, actually just changing things as our technology moves forward and as there are new things to study. So that, the emerging hazards module that's in NERIS is a good opportunity for that as well. It's like the hot topics in the fire service. So there's new things that we can kind of keep track of and actually record data on. And then as more new, interesting, maybe scary, maybe poorly understood things are being handled by the fire service, that can get updated more frequently too.
One of the things we hear routinely in discussions and we see routinely is the fire service has not done a good job of only being the fire service. We have become anything anyone else didn't want to do, we'd go do. We didn't know how to say no, but we also didn't know how to get the money to go with it. So our time has become way overstretched. So we're talking about all this and all these great things. Is it going to take a lot longer to do this operationally, to fill these reports out? Because is there so much more? What's going to be operationally for me, the firefighter? Is it going to be easier? Is it going to be a process that's going to make me struggle to have to think of things? What's the piece that y'all see there?
My experience so far writing reports in the workflow that we're building, it seems quicker. The validation requirements are simple. There's slightly fewer fields to fill out per incident, and the pages themselves, the modules, don't affect each other the same way. It feels like sometimes when you were writing an NFIRS report, something you wrote 6 pages ago was suddenly invalid because you made a choice on another field, later down the line.
Yeah.
These are all more self-contained, so I think that it's simpler for people to actually get through that. And then the data handoff to NERIS is incredibly simple and straightforward. No more waiting for anything. We've talked about that. From an extract that's built off of a code system with a really archaic file type now to, instant API data submission. It's near real time, straight to the NERIS database. And then as soon as it's accepted in their system, we're good to go. And then the updates are simple too. All you have to do is make the update and it gets sent via API. So
we talked about API. And we've been down this road operationally. I know a lot of folks that have been in administration or prevention for years, and they've had to figure out how to package up and send that packet. Like you said earlier, Craig, back in the day, it got mailed. Then we went to the yellow card where we filled out a piece of paper and that got mailed. Now I'm telling on my age. But electronically, even bringing that down and trying to get that uploaded. And does it go and it's been, I have to send it over here to the state. I've got to send it over here to U.S. Fire Administration. I've got to send it over here. With this API, what's changing with that? Me as the firefighter at the end of the day, what's that do to my world? How does that change?
So on that side, right, we were very deliberate in how we designed the system, in the sense that every state has their own node in the network, just like a fire department. So there is a state fire marshal node for every state. And so as soon as the data hits the NERIS API, it's available to the state the same way it would be available to the department and or the federal government. So it's making things on an even playing field. And, we put a lot of work into our data model. And I'm sure Katie and Jennifer would agree the data model is pretty complex. But it's complex so that the end user has an easier time. Okay. So when you think about the old forms and paper forms and having to, go left to right, and so the interconnectedness was tricky because it was a very flat setup. And by allowing by having an API, it allows us to have a much more complex data model, so that we can put computers to work, right? Why have computers are really good at moving ones and zeros around, right? Let's put them to work for us, so a person doesn't have to do that. Right, and so that we can route this data to the people that need it when they need it, and then we can also provide some analytics, right? So it's not just a send and wait kind of thing, right? The system also has some baseline capabilities to provide insights to the small rural volunteer fire department, to the state, to the federal government, right, and everything in between. Now there's tons of space for all sorts of integration partners to build on top and build custom things that are outside of our scope. But if we can build and establish a baseline across this platform, right? There's the old saying, if you know one of the 27,000 or 28,000 fire departments, you know one of them, okay, right? Let's at least build a baseline of analytics so that the conversation starter, right, is more uniform across the fire service, right? Anyone has the capability to go above and beyond. But if we can raise the floor higher than it's been, right, I think the fire service at whole benefits. And our API is the foundation that allows all of this to happen.
I think that is a significant change from at a department level, from an industry level, on how we get the data all to one spot. One of the things that we've lived, and I look at my counterparts here, is data going out that didn't ever get to a larger repository, a larger place, for up to maybe 2 years. Yep. And it wasn't because of bad intent, it was just how that process worked. So we're saying that with this process, the reports we do today will end up being with the fire administration in a much quicker. No, we're measuring a day now. We're not measuring weeks now. Mm-hmm. We're not measuring months, years any longer, which helps us identify some risk earlier. So is that what we're saying is the benefit for me as a firefighter? If I have something that's taking place in the industry, we're going to know about it much sooner. Is that?
Well, you also have departments that never submitted to NERIS or NFIRS, right? Right. It's too complicated. It takes too long. The limited files are garbage, whatever their excuses, right? They just didn't. And now we're going to make that so simple they can start reporting. So you're going to have data that NFIRS never had. That
we never even had.
And so much of it, it's amazing. I mean, like even just having that visibility into areas of the country or whatever that we never saw before, I think it's going to be new for all of us. So it'll be interesting to see.
One of the other things operationally that we've seen is there's been gaps in the systems. But the number one question that is really interesting for the U.S. Fire Service is, how many people did we save from fire last year? Mm-hmm. And statistically, we've never been able to report on that. And that's been an issue for me for years, and how we do that. And from my understanding now, we're actually going to be able to document rescues. Now, there's been groups of firefighters that have had to go out and create their own and put that data together and try to put that together. And I applaud the men and women that did that, because they were trying to get there. So is this going to be the ability to standardize and answer those questions of those things? Is it going to be too complicated? Is it going to be too much? Is it going to be 14 pages of what color was the carpet in the room that we saved them in? Did the curtains fall down? What are we looking at with that?
It's a combined rescue casualty module. And so a lot of, departments who use NFIRS are really familiar with NFIRS casualty. It's actually kind of limited in scope, and a lot of agencies have always had questions about that when we're, looking at how we use, modern software that handles NFIRS data. Casualty records are always accessible if you're writing a fire service casualty, but those NFIRS civilian casualties are only able to be recorded on fires. And so that's always kind of been a limitation. There's never been rescue data recording either. And this one's a combo, and there aren't any restrictions based on incident type. So if you save somebody from a situation, whatever that situation may be, this is a perfect opportunity to record it. And I think it's not a hard amount of data to figure out. The requirements are light, and you can do a rescue with no casualty. You can do a rescue with a casualty. You can do a non-rescue casualty. So there's endless possibilities there as far as how you want to write that down.
So we finally get to tell the story of what all of us signed up to go do.
Right, exactly.
Save people.
And I know I smile when I say that, but that's really where we are. We've been talking about we're going to save lives and property.
And then we report loss and casualties. Yep.
Amazing.
It's been weird. It is. This is really a great step. And it sounds like we're solving time workflows for the people filling out the report. Mm-hmm. And then getting data back to the people in a timely manner so we can make it actionable. And then doing it no matter what the size of the agency is, which has always been a struggle in those things. As we get ready to wrap, I really am just curious from each one of you, what's the most exciting piece of information you think we're going to see out of this new system that we haven't captured before, or we didn't capture well before? Or what do you see that we're actually going to get a little light to shine on something before?
Way to end with a softball, Bill. I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with the two different narrative fields. I like the idea of asking them explicitly to capture outcomes, and what that's going to look like. Hopefully they won't just cut paste CAD notes, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah. But yeah, I think like being more explicit about what, asking them questions, not just saying narrative, block text, go, but what, asking them what happened, what were your obstacles, what were the outcomes, and really making them think about, what were my obstacles, what did happen, and helping them to kind of craft that a little bit better. I think I'm really interested to see what they do with it.
You know how I feel about outcomes. You've listened to me talk about this forever. I think we have poorly judged ourselves in the fire service because we haven't had the reporting of an outcome. And what I mean by that is we go to a fire and we arrive and I only have light smoke showing. I have no adverse winds. The weather's appropriate. I have adequate resources. But I leave and the house is on the ground and the houses both sides of it are damaged. There's something to explain there. That doesn't add up. And it doesn't make sense. But the other side of that is we pull up to the house and we have heavy fire showing from all four sides, all levels of the house, and we leave and the two houses on both sides are lightly damaged. That's a great win that we were able to maintain that there. But we've reported that the same way. So I'm excited with you that I'd like to see some outcomes. I'd like for us to be able to say, it's not the drive-by after the fire truck leaves that answers that question. So.
Now we know that Bill's second favorite field is the conditions upon arrival for structure fires.
Yes.
I talked a little about the emerging hazards. I actually think that's cooler. NFIRS special study was underutilized, and I think that we don't actually get very many updates out of that. So that's one. But my personal favorite is the fact that the exposure tracking for fighters is way lighter than what was in NFIRS. And that's a huge time save for agencies as well. It was like an entire second report that you had to fill out completely from scratch every time there was an exposure. When I worked in customer support ages ago, somebody called and was asking if there was a simpler way to do exposure reports because they had a 29 exposure mobile home park fire. And I was like, I'm really sorry that you have to document all 29 of those, and it's going to take a long time, units and people and times all over again. And I said, there's not really a different way. But in this new application, it's as simple as a couple of questions about the exposure itself and the address. And that is it.
And that'll probably give us more information than what we've ever gotten before. Having been a person responsible for a couple of FMAG fires where you had, 127 homes devastated by fires and doing those type of things, it's painful. And the accuracy goes away about number 20.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
Now we're just going through a task. And I think by making it more succinct and back to just the point of what we need, we'll probably get better accuracy. So that's a great call out.
Can I say all of the above?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, buddy.
I'm a little biased. Now, in all seriousness, I think, the shift to modernize location with lat-long support being, while our location or civic location module is also complex behind the scenes to sync with NG911. I think it's critical that we went that route from the start. But the user doesn't need to see that, right? We abstract it all in the software. But having lat long, knowing where incidents are occurring with much greater precision, right? And then overlaying that with other department resources like your jurisdictional boundaries or supporting any other region set, right? Having that support to be able to link where calls are truly occurring, along with all this other information, I think can really empower folks to make some decisions both at the local level, at the regional level, and state level that we weren't able to make before.
I think that's a great point about the ability for that being geocoded, that the address being specified, the ability to do that. Because as we talk about telling our story, you want to talk about telling a story to a local government. You put a map and you start putting things in their mind. And you put that with a couple of color graphs and some pieces of a narrative there. And that really talks about the grassroots home fire department and the difference they get a chance to make. And I think it all starts with, where are we exactly at when we're doing this? And I think that's a great point. So I want to thank y'all for taking out some time to join us here today in the studio. This is exciting. I don't care who you are in the fire service. I don't care where you are. This is the change. This is the pivot. The fire service will look back during this year, decades from now, when we're not in the fire service, when I'm not around the fire service, and go, this is the mark that changed what we did. And I think it's so cool to actually be able to talk with people that help design, help build, help work through putting the tools in people's hands to do this. So thank you, not just for me, but also on behalf of the fire service, for helping us get to the next generation. Thank you for joining us today. For additional information about ESO and NERIS, please refer to ESO.com. Thank you. Be safe. Next time on Navigating NERIS, we'll be with local fire departments that have started understanding the NERIS impacts to their organization and using the tools to start making it better.